It is a little-known mythical zombie that undermines our most fundamental concepts of humanity, but it also bears deep meaning to its place of origin in Central Asia and represents the horrors of an entire culture. It is the Mankurt, the soulless slave from the desert. Hi, and welcome to All That Is Dark, where we take an intellectual dive into the darker corners of human culture and psychology. The Mankurt is a type of slave from Central Asian mythology. It made its first appearance in the epic poem of Manas, one of the longest and most elaborate mythologies in the world. But who made it world famous was actually a modern author, Kyrgyz author Chingiz Aytmatov, in his book The Day That Lasts More Than 100 Years. Here's how Aytmatov describes the making of a Mankurt in the book. First of all, their heads were completely shaved. When this was completed, expert butchers killed a nearby nursing camel and skinned it. They removed the heavy udder, divided it into several pieces, and, in its still warm state, stretched it over the shaven heads. The man who was subjected to the ensuing torture either died or he lost his memory of the past forever. He had become a Mankurt. When I read The Day, I did not expect to find any horror in it. After all, it is not a horror book. It is the story of a poor railway worker, Yedigey, who embarks on a long journey to bring his good friend to a proper Muslim burial. It is a story of love, friendship, and a lot of social and political criticism. Yet the fantasy horror legend of the Mankurt is one of the most memorable parts in the book. In the story, a brave mother sets out to find her missing son, who was kidnapped and turned into a Mankurt. After a long and dangerous travel, she finally finds him. However, he does not remember her, and no matter how hard she tries to revive his memory, it is all in vain. The son remains completely indifferent to his mother's begging and crying, and at the end of the story, by the command of his master, kills her. The slain mother's spirit then lives on in the desert winds and the wailing of the birds, calling for her lost son for all eternity. The Mankurt is the utmost depiction of a person who cannot think for himself. It is a creature that is selectively bred for slavery, as Aytmatov describes. Deprived of any understanding of his own ego, the Mankurt possessed, from his master's point of view, a whole range of advantages. He was the equivalent of a dumb animal and therefore absolutely obedient and safe, and very valuable, being worth 10 healthy, untreated prisoners. The Mankurt making process strips away nearly all of the unique mental qualities of humans, memory, emotion, and even the very recognition of self. That leaves the slave just enough human to perform his master's orders. According to the story, Mankurts would be sent by their masters to do the dirtiest, most menial jobs imaginable in the most desolate areas and would never complain or object. But the Mankurt is more than just a horrifying folktale. It is also an allegory for the very real fears and concerns in Aytmatov's world. Fears that could not be explicitly uttered under the tyranny of the USSR, so Aytmatov had to hide them as a sophisticated legend. Mankurt is a name often used in Central Asia for someone who has given up their culture to succeed in a foreign-dominated environment. It is a derogatory term for someone who has complete disregard of his tradition, culture, and family, but moreover has no independent thought. That nickname is deeply rooted in the social and political history of the region. Central Asia has been under Russian colonial rule for most of the last 150 years. Both regimes who ruled the area during this time, the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, have executed a policy known as Russification. That is basically the forced attempt to assimilate non-Russian people into the dominant Russian culture. In Kyrgyzstan, Aytmatov's homeland, this policy included the replacing of the Kyrgyz Persian alphabet with a Cyrillic one, the effort to destroy the traditional nomadic way of life, when shepherds were forcefully resettled far away from their pastures so they could not graze their herds, and perhaps the most important for our story, the Chongtash tragedy, in which 137 Kyrgyz politicians, scientists, and intellectuals who advocated for Kyrgyz independence were executed. One of them was Aytmatov's father. Aytmatov himself was only 10 years old at the time. And yet, Russification was not all forced. To a large extent, it was the inevitable result of a world in which most knowledge was available in one language only, Russian. Even Aitmatov himself, who was deeply and personally hurt by this process, recognized it. We cannot attain progress by isolating ourselves from Russia. The Russian language and culture are an integral part of the psyche of the Kyrgyz and Kazakhs, offering them an access to civilization. That conflict between cultural pride on one hand and the will to thrive and survive on the other is a major motif in Central Asian literature in general and the day specifically. But the Mankurts, whom Aitmatov criticizes, have forgone this conflict. Rather, they find solace in serving their Soviet colonizers, and would hurt their people and even family if their masters so command, exactly as the Mankurt who kills his own mother without a second thought. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I hope you found this video interesting. If there's any other topic you want me to talk about, to take a closer intellectual dive into, let me know in the comment section below. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much again, and see you next time.